Hello, good morning. Welcome here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph, and I am the host of this show. So we're here with the what I call the Sunday morning breakfast live, basically because I just ate. We're going to be featuring the big three. I call them the big three. I think many people think of them as the big three. I'm going to take my glasses off. I'm getting a bit of a glare. So the big three are those three hard rock, heavy metal bands that came out in the late 60s and early 80s. Late 60s and early 70s that had a huge impact on rock music going forward. And of course, we're talking about Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple. Yeah, all three of these bands have had a huge legacy on hard rock and heavy metal. Hey, Grandizer, welcome to the channel. So all three of these bands, of course, have had huge impacts on hard rock, especially, and heavy metal as well, especially Zeppelin, which I think is considered to be one of the greatest bands in the history of rock music. Yeah, the old Diamondback hat. Yeah, I got this in a Cardinal one. I wanted the Cardinal one, but they were two for one. So I picked the Diamondback because I don't have a purple hat. Well, I have one purple hat, but I'm not going to be using it anytime soon. Anyways, yeah, so those are the three bands we're going to talk about today. I picked out some of their albums. I didn't take my whole discography. It would fill up the table if I did that. So I'm not going to do that. But all three bands have had different impacts with me at different periods of time. I would say Led Zeppelin had the impact on me earlier on when I was in grade 6, 7, and 8, when I was a huge Kiss fan. Of course, everybody in my school talked about either Kiss or Led Zeppelin were the two big bands at that time period for me. And so I wasn't a huge Zeppelin fan, but I did check out their stuff periodically during that period of time. Then came Black Sabbath in the 80s, became one of my favorite bands. I think they've been as high as my second favorite band at periods of time. They've come back and forth, but they've always been in my elite group since that period of time back in 1980. My first encounter with Sabbath was on one of those old K-Tel albums where they had the song Paranoid. That was my first encounter with them. And then, of course, the other band, Deep Purple, much later got into them. I knew who they were going back to high school because I remember we were jamming in the auditorium at school. We were playing the Smoke on the Water, which I knew a little bit of, but not too much. Anyways, fantastic band. Lots of, for me, they are the one band that's kind of a hit and miss. Of the three, they have some absolutely outstanding albums, and then some that I don't really care as much for. They also have the largest discography of the three as well, and the most different, to me, the most different eras. And currently they are still performing, and maybe among their best stuff is being put out there right now. It's some very good stuff. The last half dozen years or so have produced a lot of really good albums, and I suspect they will continue for the foreseeable future. I know that Ian Gillan has had a problem with his eyesight, only being able to see about 30% out of one eye. I think that's what I've read anyways. But, some excellent albums by these three bands. So I think, and in some ways, Led Zeppelin and not Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple and Black Sabbath have had a little bit of a crossover tie with them, with Ian Gillan singing vocals on for both bands at different periods of time. I would have liked to have seen more of Ian Gillan with Black Sabbath. I thought he was fantastic. The album itself, not great production. It sounded kind of murky, but the songs were fantastic. Would have liked to see them do another album or two. Anyways, I'm going to talk a little bit about the albums I pulled, only because there's no specific reason why I pulled them. I pulled 3 of each from each band. Just wanted to talk about some albums that I've been thinking about a little bit lately. So we'll break them into their packs, put them in their categories. And we'll start out with Led Zeppelin because they're at the top of the heap, basically. So these 3 albums I've been listening to a little bit more in recent times than some of the other stuff. Led Zeppelin 2. This was the album for me that kind of launched this band. This was the first album I owned by them. This was the first CD I owned by them. And for me, I thought this was an absolute outstanding album. Just absolutely incredible. I listened to it a lot when I first got it. The quality is kind of, the production not so good. Lots of odd sounds and stuff going on, but it was a time period too. Not everybody came out with some fantastic stuff, right? Not everybody. This has some of their most legendary songs on it, though. Obviously, A Whole Lot of Love, which is the opening track. I believe it was a stolen song, or at least a song that they copied from another song, but still really good anyways. Lemon Song, another legendary Zeppelin song for sure. I like the Living Loving Maid, Heartbreaker and Living Loving Maid combo. I preferred the Living Loving Maid combo. I thought it was absolutely great. And then you got Ramble On, which is, to me, one of their very best songs. Was early on one of my favorites. The funny part is that Bring It On Home eventually became my favorite song on the album, which is kind of funny. I never cared much for Moby Dick. I don't know why. I never liked the drum tracks that people put out. Some people did excellent drum tracks. I love Neil Peart's style, so his drum tracks I love. But Zeppelin seemed a little bit pushing the envelope. Never really cared much for Moby Dick. So anyways, that's one of the albums. The other albums include, of course, Zeppelin 4, which is a near masterpiece of perfection. Lots of really good stuff on this album. It's funny how it is, the songs that I loved early on, Black Dog, Rock and Roll, Misty Mountain Hop. Yeah, not as much now. I prefer Going to California and The Levee Breaks now. And even The Battle of Evermore, I don't mind that quite a bit. No, I don't remember listening to any particular show. There was a period of time when, I don't even remember when it was, probably when I was married, where Alice Cooper had a show late night, and sometimes I would listen to that, but that was about it. I don't even remember anything about that really. Yeah, so this is a fantastic album. I don't think Zeppelin did anything better than this. It's not always been one of my favorite albums by them, but lately I've been listening to it a little bit more. And then, of course, this album, The Presence, which a lot of people don't care for as much, but I think this is a good album. Achilles' Last Stand is as good as any Zeppelin song out there. Very different, too. It's a different style, very heavy style. Some of the other tracks are not bad as either. Been listening to this a little more because this is an album I haven't listened to as much as I used to, as much as I could have, and I've only had this in recent years. But Achilles' Last Stand, 10 minutes in length. Did Zeppelin ever do anything like that before or after? I doubt it. But so those are the 3 Zeppelin albums that I like and that I've been listening to a lot lately. Yeah, the Get the Let Out title has been used by quite a few different radio areas that use radio stuff. But again, I'm not a radio person, so I don't really listen to it. So I couldn't tell you anything about it really. So the next band we're going to go on to is probably my favorite of the 3. Actually, it's pretty easily my favorite of the 3. I chose some albums that I've been listening to lately that, of course, Paranoid is the one that most people will put down as their favorite Black Sabbath album. One of the worst covers in rock, though. Just doesn't make any sense. This cover's just whacked. However, the songs on here are great. War Pigs, Luke's Wall. People just call it War Pigs. One of the great Black Sabbath tracks. One of the first really heavy kind of doomy metal kind of tracks, right? Paranoid, of course, heavy metal for sure. One of their big hits, if not their biggest hit. Planet Caravan, which is kind of a psychedelic song, really different. I like this song quite a bit, though. I didn't initially like it much at all, but it came on. Of course, Iron Man, probably overplayed, but still, again, emphasizing that doom heavy metal sound that you get, right? And then the flip side, though, is almost as good. You know, you got the Electric Funeral, kind of a weird, electronically quirky, different type of song. Hand of Doom and Jack the Stripper and Fairy Wear Boots, if you prefer. Kind of hard rockish, heavy metalish too. So this is among the very first heavy metal albums, I think. Really great album. The other 2 I've been listening to. This one, of course, with Ian Gillan. So we'll just do it a tie. I chose this one for the tie over. The cover, different. It's kind of this psychedelic feel to it on the back as well. Some of the best. They wrote some really good stuff on this. Trashed, Disturbing the Priest, Zero the Hero, Born Again. These are all A Digital Bitch. These are all, and then of course the final 2 tracks, Hotline and Keep It Warm. Just such a heavy album. Maybe their heaviest album. Not really, doesn't sound a lot like anything that went before with Black Sabbath, although I think it sounds more like the Ozzy era than the Dio era did, but still, it's a great album. And then the one that gets knocks, gets a lot of knocks, but I like this album a lot. It was kind of my entry point into the Ozzy era. This is the first one I got. This particular one has a crack in it. I'll have to repair that. Yeah, I like all the stuff on here. Never Say Die, really heavy opening track, and Johnny Blade. Those 2 great combo for opening. I loved Junior's Eyes. I even like A Hard Road, which is kind of their kind of single on the album, I guess. Some of the stuff at the back is a little bit different. Air Dance, Shockwave, and Swinging the Chain, all pretty damn good though. Anyways, those are my 3 Sabbath albums. And then, of course, my 3 Deep Purple albums here. And we'll go with this one. So this one is as good an album as any of the other 2 bands put out, in my opinion. If I was ranking them, this would probably be in those top 3 or 4 for sure. Just has so much heaviness to it. It's bluesy. Ian Gillan's voice is as good as, I think he has the better voice of any of the lead guys in any of these bands. He's just fantastic. You got Speed King and one of my favorite, Bloodsucker. I love this song. It's absolutely great. Child of Time, many feel it's the best Deep Purple song ever. I can't complain. Some people hate it. I don't know why. It's the kind of outlier, same as Achilles' Last Stand is with Zeppelin. This is a bit of an outlier. It's kind of a lengthy song for this band. Into the Fire, Living Wreck, and Hard Rock, Hard Loving Man. Nice ending to the album. Really strong, heavy stuff. I do like this cover. It's kind of different. The other two I chose were Who Do We Think We Are? This doesn't get as much attention as some of their other bigger albums, but just they came out in 1970. It's their fourth studio album. So they had three in the 1960s that were a different era for them, really different sounding too. And then when they added Ian Gillan and Roger Glover on the in a rock album, they became a different band to my way of thinking. This one's is good. This one's very similar to In Rock. I don't think it's as good, but it's pretty damn close. And again, they went through this period where all their albums had like 7 tracks, and all three of these have 7 tracks on them. I don't know why. That was a magic number for them, I guess. Women from Tokyo, really good. Super Trooper, really good. Our Lady, really good. All of the tracks on this are strong. This is a stronger album than gets noted for. Doesn't really have a lot of really well-known tracks, but a lot of really good deep cuts in it. This album, Fireball, like this a lot too. So this is the follow-up to In Rock. Kind of a different cover though. Not sure what they were attempting to do here, but this has Strange Kind of Woman is on here, and Fools, both really good tracks. Yeah, this whole album's just really good though. Anyone's Daughter, this is the Farmer's Daughter thing, really good. And I think that this band is just pumping along at this point. So this is the album that came in between In Rock and Machine Head, two of their biggest albums. Really great album. So those are the albums that I've been listening to by these bands lately. I could have pulled out a ton more albums, but I thought I would leave it open for anybody who wanted to ask questions or who wanted to talk about anything in particular. I think when I think of the 3 bands, so they all came out roughly in the same period of time. Deep Purple, 67, their first album. Led Zeppelin, their first album in 69, and then Black Sabbath, their debut album back in 1970. All 3 very impactful bands. Now, I think probably Deep Purple didn't have as quick or meteoric rise as the other 2 bands, but they were a lot more steady and started producing really strong albums in the early 70s. Just unfortunate for them, they kind of dropped out of sight from about 76 to 84 when they had their reunion. It was an 8-year period. And in that time period, if you missed 8 years, you were pretty much a new band when you came back because nobody would know you hardly. Where the other 2 bands, from start to finish, they pretty much produced albums. Well, maybe not so much with Black Sabbath. Towards the end of their career, they went fairly lengthy periods without producing anything. But Zeppelin, of course, producing albums regularly right up from 69 till their last album in 79. Yeah, you can count Coda if you want. I don't really think of Coda. To me, Coda was just somebody went through there, picked out songs that they never used on albums and then decided to put them together and make an album. And that's pretty much what happened, I think. Not that some of the tracks are pretty decent. They're decent enough tracks. I think what they should have done, what they couldn't have done, would have been to record them for a more modern album. But if they were gonna do that, they would have just produced new stuff. So it's kind of a not gonna happen thing, right? Oh, hi, Stephen. Welcome to the channel. We're kind of talking Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin here, the big 3, I call them. These very influential bands. Yeah, yeah, it's a long period of time. I mean, Boston did this several times over their career. But for a band of Deep Purple status to go 8 years without producing anything and not even really existing, it's a tough recovery. I don't know. You tell me. I don't really have a theme for the months of March. The windy month, I guess. This month, I'm doing on my series. I'm doing all live albums for the entire month. Live albums I have in my collection or have owned at some point. So anybody who's watching that series will automatically assume that certain bands are going to have this album or that album, but I never own those albums, so I'm not going to put them on as episodes. There are a lot more than any other episode any series I've done. There are a ton of albums that um, bands are famous for, but I've just never owned them, so I'm not going to put them in there if they're not known to me, or if I've not listened to them enough to warrant it. But I had to have owned them at least once. And no, I don't think I'll be doing any Halloween. It's We're about 7 months too premature for that. I don't know that prog music can really be done that way. You know, did prog bands actually put out singles? Maybe some did, I guess, but I don't think of when I think of prog bands, I think of albums. I don't really think. I mean, there are some bands, of course, who have done singles. I don't know how proggy they are, though. There's a few, I guess, that are pretty well known. But generally speaking, most prog bands don't put out singles or B sides. Well, B sides are kind of a thing of the 70s and 60s, anyways. Yeah, I don't know that there's any B sides anymore. Do people even put out singles anymore? I doubt it. I don't know if there's any particular song that started it off. People tend to think of King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King as the first prog album, fully prog album. And I don't believe there was a single on that. If you were going to say what was the big song on there, I don't even know that there's one of those. Even I maybe in 21st Century Schizoid Man might be considered the kind of most well-known track from that, but I don't know that it would be a single. Yeah, I own all the Led Zeppelin too. I have all the Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. I have all but the Tony Martin era, which isn't. I don't really have anything against the Tony Martin era. I just haven't had. It hasn't been easy to find any of them. I mean, they're out there, but I don't want to be paying like $30 for an album that I may or may not like, right? And then, of course, Deep Purple, I have a fair number of them. I would say maybe 10 or 11, but there's a lot more to get, especially the later stuff, the stuff that's come out maybe in the last decade has been very good, some very good stuff. Oh, definitely Zeppelin is definitely got some heavy metal elements and some hard rock elements. I think they're kind of considered the one of the front forward bands that was considered influential on the heavy metal scene, no doubt about it. And as for hard rock, definitely. But I think of them as a heavy blues rock, hard rock band with some metal influences. And in recent albums or their more recent albums, they kind of went off into some reggae and a little bit of uh, what we would call rockabilly. There's a little bit of that in their music too. So they weren't afraid to explore. I think if you ask them, they didn't consider themselves a heavy metal band. They were a rock band with lots of different influences. Yeah, both those bands, if you like Zeppelin, you'll probably almost certainly like some of the newer Deep Purple. If you like the heavier Zeppelin, you'll probably like some of the early Black Sabbath stuff too. Some people don't really like Dio; they find it too metalish. Yeah, depends on what you like, I guess. Yeah, a lot of people. I get this the tie between the three bands, why they're always tied together. But Black Sabbath is a much heavier band than either of the other two, in my opinion. To me, I think of the original Sabbath is kind of a heavy blues, hard rock, metal band, where with Deep Purple, they're probably more of a bluesy hard rock band, and then Zeppelin maybe more like them than like Sabbath. But all three of them definitely got the hard element to their music. There's no two ways about that. No, I don't see any of these bands being in the jam band category, which is good because I wouldn't listen to them if they were. There are very few jam bands I can handle for any length of time. I like all three of these bands. If I was rating them, I would say Zeppelin's. I would say Sabbath's definitely my favorite. They're a group one band for me, or elite band for me. Zeppelin, just outside of that, they've been close to being an elite band at times, but just never quite make it. Deep Purple, quite a bit further down than either of the two. And in Deep Purple's defense, they came much later to the game for me than the other two, so they've been playing catch up that whole time. The other thing too is that um, Deep Purple has some great albums, and then some ones that I not really care for much. I don't know why. Yeah, I would say you're probably bang on there, Stephen. I think that Zeppelin are a hard rock band. I think all three of these bands are hard rock bands, with Black Sabbath, at least the Sabbath that came out in the 80s, definitely crossed over into the metal realm. Iron Butterfly, yeah, to me they're a hard rock, heavy metal, psychedelic psychedelic band. They did have a couple songs that I think went. Whenever a band has songs going in the 14, 15-minute range, that's really bordering on prog, really, in a lot of ways. Yeah, I agree with you. The problem with changing your personnel, and you'll probably agree with me here, is that the music changes. And then if you happen to love the music they were putting out, and the music changes, doesn't always mean that it's going to change into something you really are going to like, right? In the case of Sabbath, I liked both changes quite a bit early on. The change with Dio, I liked that. That was to me a step up. And the Born Again album, Ian Gillan was fantastic. I wish they'd done more. I don't know much about the Tony Martin era. By that time, I was not listening to Sabbath or anybody really for a while there. I kind of drifted away from them, was going in different directions. um, I don't know if I don't think of these three bands as sellout bands. I'm sure there were songs in there that were commercially friendly. um, Maybe with Deep Purple early on, they had the song Hush, which to me is a bit more of a radio friendly track, poppy. Led Zeppelin, of course, had so many hits that difficult to call them commercial, though. I mean, they did have some commercial sound to the music, otherwise, they wouldn't be having hits, right? As for Black Sabbath. Well, they had Paranoid, which is very commercially sounding, heavy song, but I wouldn't call any of their stuff sellout. To me, sellout is when you change your style so drastically just to get airplay. You know. Hey Vaughn, welcome to the channel. Glad to have you aboard. So we're discussing Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, the big three. They were referred to as the big three. I don't know that people refer to them as that anymore, but that's what they were referred to. The big three of hard rock, heavy metal, they used to call them. And all three of them have bits. All three of them, I think, definitely qualify for the hard rock category. And then the varying degrees, each of them has a little bit of metal element to their music as well. I don't think any of these bands were forced in a way to do it because they were all successful in their own realm, in their own music, and were popular with the people who liked them and are still, for the most part, very popular. I don't think there was ever a force to be like they weren't. None of them, I think, were forced to be humble pie or anything like that. Yeah, I don't like Heart's 80s stuff at all. And I've kind of grown bored with their early stuff. It was good, but I think I just kind of drifted away from it a bit. Yeah, the big three. You know, there's groupings of bands that tend to, when you think of one, you will lock the others within there. There's the big six of Prague. They are often thought of when you think of one, and they're talking about bands that are in that lump, in that some you're going to go to those other five as well. Same with in the 80s when they had the when they started getting into that thrash metal, speed metal realm, and you had those big four like Anthrax, Megadeth, Metallica, and Slayer. Those were the big four, and then you've got other groups that are kind of locked together too. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I have grown to love Iron Maiden quite a bit more than I originally have. Like I've always listened to them since my inception back at the beginning of their public, I'll call it public announcement. Killers was kind of the first one I heard. My friend had it, so we listened to it. But it was the new album that came out the year we started listening to Killers, which was The Number of the Beast, that kind of I entered, and for the longest time, that was my favorite album by them. But over the years, it's slid down mostly because it's been played so much. I played it so much, but they have some absolute killer albums, like from Number of the Beast right through to into the 90s. They had one great, fantastic album after another. I recently discovered some of their later stuff because I kind of went away from them a bit. I would only listen to the three I liked, which were Seventh Son of the Seventh Son, Power Slave, and and Number of the Beast. But then I started moving into other directions for some of their other stuff, and no no Prayer for the Dying and this Book of Souls. These are both absolutely killer albums, and I've got other stuff that I'm only starting to get into now. Yeah, they're just a band I can listen to them forever. You know, Judas Priest is the other one. So both of those two bands have made huge strides with me since I started this channel back 4.5 years ago. I had basically at 4.5 years ago, I had, let me think here. I think I had only the three Iron Maiden albums and just the two Judas Priest albums, which included Screaming for Vengeance and Defenders of the Faith. But now I've got like 15 of each of them, and they're just all fantastic. Some of their stuff is bordering on just masterpieces. So I'm in agreement with you there, Stephen. Yeah, they were just they were a full-on metal band. Um, you could say that Black Sabbath was a metal band, but they had other lots of other elements in their music. You could say that Judas Priest was a metal band, but they were different at the beginning too, but not Iron Maiden. I guess with Iron Maiden, you could say there was a kind of a punk element to their music early on, but they definitely were metal right from the start. Yeah, I tend to like British bands. I'm afraid that overwhelming if you're going to put a scale and put the British bands on one side, you could pretty much put the rest of the world on the other side, and I still think the British bands would outweigh them. Yeah, I think the original singer with Iron Maiden, Paul Diano, good singer, but definitely had a punky kind of voice. I think if he'd stayed in the band, you would not have seen the kind of success that they had because they might have stayed more in that punky element, which I don't think would have panned out as well for them as what happened with them with the metal sound. And as good as Paul Diano is, I think he's a good vocalist. I don't think he's in the same league as Bruce Dickinson. I really don't. Yeah, they have that gallop to their music. Definitely very good way to describe them. Rejects? I'm not sure what you mean or what you're referring to. Well, I was into movies and stuff maybe a decade ago, but movies have really taken a downhill turn over the last decade. A lot of nonsense in them, so I don't pay attention. All of my favorite series, uh, theater series, is all of the Star Trek and all of the um, Star Wars stuff. Just has taken a nosedive into the pavement. I just can't watch any of it. I think it's just a lot of crap now. So, and the same as the green screen has kind of taken over theater. That might be a good thing for some, not so much for me. I don't really like. It's not even there's not even really acting anymore. It's just who could put out the biggest special effects, right? And I don't mind special effects, but the storyline has to be good, and there's just too much political crap in all of it, and I just don't really want to be bothered with it. So for those of you who came in a little late, I'm just going to um, kind of talk a little bit more about the bands that I chose. So I chose just three albums from each band because I've got a lot of them. I could go on forever. These three are the three I've kind of been listening to lately. Fireball, which is great. This is a great album. Um, uh, Who Do We Think We Are? Another very good album. And of course, In Rock. So their early stuff is really super great. Love them. Um, and some of the stuff in the middle, not so much. And then now the later stuff I like by Deep Purple quite a bit. Yeah, Fireball is a fantastic album. I almost rate it as good as In Rock. To me, they're just both really good albums. For Black Sabbath, I chose these are the three I've been listening to. Very different sounding, of course. Paranoid lately. I got away from Paranoid for years because it's just overplayed, but it's just one of the great masterpiece early heavy metal albums. This one, of course, is just to me is despite the production sound and the crappy sound to it, it just songs on it are legendary. And then this album, which isn't as popular by other people, but was my first Aussie era album, and it kind of has a special place for me, and I like it a lot. Nah, I don't see me doing that, Grandizer. I do not. I do not find that the slightest interest in that. Um, and then of Zeppelin, of course, I've been listening to this one. This is a well put together album. I don't think it's as big as some of Zeppelin's other stuff, but it has Achilles' Last Stand, which is definitely one of their very best songs and very different from a lot of their stuff, too. Of course, everybody loves Led Zeppelin 4 and Led Zeppelin 2, both of these for different reasons I like. I probably prefer the songs off this one more, but I think the sound is better on this one. And the songs that are at the top on this one may be better than anything at the top on this one. It's hard to say. They're both really good. Neither of these are my favorite Zeppelin album, but they're both really good. Yeah, the presence is it just doesn't for some reason it doesn't it's not really spoken of in a lot of great terms by people who whenever they talk about Zeppelin, they always single out either in through the outdoor or the presence as being weak, especially the presence. Presence doesn't get the kind of love that I think it should get. I mean, any album with a song like Achilles' Last Stand on it, you got to notice that album. Very few bands even put out a song like that. Definitely not one that's like really at the top of the game. If I was going to do like three metal bands, I chose these three because they're the big three. But if I was going to do three metal bands, I think you have to include Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and maybe the Scorpions in that discussion. Yeah, a lot of people love that physical graffiti. I like aspects of. There's some songs on there that are as good as any Zeppelin songs. I think there's. I've always had this problem with double albums. Um, there's usually half the songs are great, and then the other half are maybe you could do without. There are some songs on that Zeppelin album that just do nothing for me. But there's the same, like The Wall to me is the same thing from Pink Floyd. It's the exact same thing. Like there's half a dozen really solid, great stuff on there, and then there's a bunch of stuff that I just assume they didn't put it out. Oh, hey, Will, welcome to the channel. I don't think it's their best record. I don't want to give the impression I think this album is their best record because I don't. It ranked fairly low on my ranking, but it's not bad. Like to me, Zeppelin doesn't have a bad album. I can't say that same thing about Deep Purple and Black Sabbath. They both have some albums that are not great. There's some of the albums too, for some reason, just never hit me right. Now, many people love Sabotage. They think it's one of Black Sabbath's really great albums. I don't feel it with that album, and it's the same with Technical Ecstasy. Either of those albums, I just don't feel it coming from them. And for a long time, I didn't really feel that way about the Mob Rules, but it's become a masterpiece with me over the years as I've listened to it more. And some of the stuff that I initially liked, I liked Voodoo and Turn Up the Night. They were the two songs I liked a lot early on. I don't really care for those tunes anymore. I prefer Sign of the Southern Cross and Country Girl. Those are the two that I kind of like the most. Yeah, a lot of people love The Wall. It's if I was when I did my Pink Floyd ranking, I got hits. People were mad at me because I put it so far down the list. It was in the eighth or ninth. I can't remember exactly where. I just I've, and I some of that is backlash from when I was in high school. That album was out, and it kind of set the stage for no Pink Floyd for me for 20 years. I just never bothered with the band because I didn't really care for that album, and I thought there's no way all their stuff's going to sound like that, so why bother? But that's not the truth. Once I discovered Dark Side of the Moon, when I bought it at that yard sale one day, that was the beginning for Pink Floyd for me. No, I don't think it's their best record either, but it's still a really, like I said, I don't think they have a bad album. I've never really warmed up to their debut album. That's the one for me is the weakest of them. I guess maybe it's very heavy bluesish sound, and the stuff that isn't really that way sounds very commercial. Like they sound like two different albums when I listen to it. It's kind of a mix mash of a lot of stuff. Yes, Ian Gillan is the vocals on this album with the baby. Is that the one you're referring to, the monster? Yeah. So they basically just took a baby, painted, and it did a kind of a green wall here. It's a terrible album cover, but I kind of like it. The songs on here are really heavy, though. To me, this is maybe Sabbath's heaviest album. And Ian Gillan is, despite the bad production of this album, he is, I think, at his best on this album. Of all the stuff he's sung on, I like him best on this album. I never got that live at Wembley. I've seen this around online, but never seen it anywhere else. Would like to get it. Though I like Floyd is one of those bands I like live. I think their sound is good live. Yeah, it's definitely a quirky album cover. It actually, when they did a ranking of the worst album covers in history. I don't know who it was that did it, and it was on there along with actually, or the most satanic album covers of all time, and that one was on there, and so was the Number of the Beast, which I think is a fantastic album cover myself. Iron Maiden really doesn't have any really terrible covers. There's a couple that maybe aren't as good, but overall they've got some fantastic covers. If I was doing my top, say, 20 or 25 favorite heavy metal covers, they would be at least half a dozen albums on there. Yeah, I don't tend to play anything backwards though, especially DVD players won't do that for you really. You could get away with that a bit on the vinyl stuff back in the day where you just spin the album backwards. And we did do that. There was a few Zeppelin albums actually where they said that there's a demonic message on it. So if you played it backwards, so we tried playing it backwards, and all we did was scratch the record. Just stupid shit like that, right? I might do an episode where we talk about albums where you know albums that were kind of controversial. Not necessarily controversial, but there was rumors about them, and that's what sold the albums was the rumors about them. I can think of a half dozen like that right off the top of my head that would fit that, definitely fit that parameter. It's just people, they somebody says one thing and then it spreads. Yeah, you couldn't get away with doing that with vinyl. I mean, you couldn't do it with CDs because they won't go backwards, but with vinyl, or I don't think you could do it on cassette or 8-track either, but you could definitely do it on vinyl by spinning the album backward on the turntable, which really annoyed the shit out of my parents because it would damage the turntable. So they would get mad if they seen us doing it. So we just didn't do it. We tried it with a couple of albums. I think Led Zeppelin 4 was the one that comes to mind, where they were talking about there being demonic messages on the if you played it backwards. I've always with Zeppelin, they always do that kind of shit, right? Yeah, so I scratched an album or two doing that. And then there was a couple of albums that we didn't like. My friend had one. It was the Meatloaf "Bat Out of Hell," and I know that's a popular album with a lot of people, but we didn't like it, so we used it as a frisbee. You're outside playing frisbee with the bat out of hell. That's just that's kids for you, though. We like what we like, and what we don't like, and it doesn't matter that everybody else might love it. If we didn't like it, there was one album that everybody loved, and I'm trying to remember what it was now, that we didn't tell anybody because we didn't want them to hate us, so that we hated it. The disco albums, of course, were great frisbees. Had a few of those, a couple of BG albums. I think we were, and to be honest with you, I don't mind the disco as much as I hated it when I was a teenager, but I don't mind it as much now as I did then. Some of the other albums that I didn't pull out from Deep Purple, some of their later stuff is really quite good. Their last couple have been fantastic albums, and this is the same with Judas Priest and Uriah Heep. These bands have put out some fantastic albums recently too. And you don't kind of expect this from these bands because you get the Yes syndrome, like, oh my God, another terrible album. Although their last album wasn't that bad either, but this is a band that's been irrelevant for decades now. They just putting one shit album after another out. Well, I shouldn't say that. The albums are decent enough, I guess. They all have something that is good on them, but they're just not. They just don't live up to anything from the early 80s and 70s. Yeah, that band had a lot of members, eh? I don't know that much about them. I have a couple of their albums. I think I have the Indigata Vita and Ball, I think, are the two I own. But I don't know much about them. They're quite heavier than I thought they were, though. But I don't know much about their membership or anything about the band. I couldn't even tell you who the members are. I don't know if they're. I don't really know. I don't really pay much attention to that anymore. That was kind of a fad that went on in the 70s, that satanic stuff. You don't hear as much about it now because, to be honest with you, they don't need to put it backwards now. They just put it in the forward part. If there's satanic stuff, they just put it right up front. They're not trying to hide anything anymore. Yeah, I never. Yeah, I like both. I like them both for different reasons. Funny. My perception of Star Trek and Star Wars was, I always thought of Star Wars as being the more realistic, and Star Trek as just being like science junk, right? But now I think it's the other way around. I think there's not much realism to the Star Wars at all, and there's at least some scientific basis for some of the stuff in Star Trek. Yeah, of course, the Rush. I have everything by Rush. Um, I see a Rush album I don't have. I gotta have it. I don't know. I'm wondering if they'll do a new one. I'm not sure if I like this or not. I haven't decided. Um, I guess it's their band. They can do what they want, and I'm sure it'll be good. But it's not going to be the same. Like, it can't be. It's impossible for it to be the same. Like, Neil Peart was such an integral member of the band. It'd be tough to put out something that covers it. This is what Steven's talking about, where like, too many changes in a band sometimes affect it, and not always in a good way. Yeah, I'm a Star Wars guy. I was not anymore. I haven't watched anything since the prequels came out back in the turn of the century. This new stuff, I tried watching. Um, what do they call it? The Last Jedi. Yeah, The Last Jedi, which is kind of the first one of the new trilogy. Hated it. Hated it. I couldn't even stomach watching. I went to the theater too, but I stayed for the whole thing. The next one out, I kind of tried to watch a bit of, and then I haven't even seen anything from the third one. Don't know a single thing about it. To me, it's not part of Star Wars history. All of the stuff they're putting out with all of these like trans people stuff, forget it. I can't be bothered. Yeah, I kind of like Lost in Space though. I do. I kind of like it. It's like the day the world ended. I kind of like that as well. I do like Trek and Star Wars, but the earlier stuff. I don't even like the new Trek. Trek has gone off into something that would make Gene Roddenberry roll around in his grave, I'm sure. Well, I think she's a great drummer. I'm not taking away from her abilities at all. I think she can learn and play the Rush stuff. It won't be a problem. I don't know about the percussion stuff because I don't know what she's like as a percussionist. Can she play the marimba? Can she do all of the that stuff? Maybe. I guess she could learn it, but I don't know. I don't know that much about her other than she's a fantastic drummer. And she actually has a very somewhat similar style to Neil Peart. When I listen to her drumming technique, I think she has a pretty similar style. I'm thinking they'll do well together when they do the tour. I don't know about an album though. I haven't decided on that. Yeah, I like all three of those bands, Stephen. Queen, Zeppelin, Hendrix. Prefer the Zeppelin and Hendrix over the Queen. There's some Queen I love, some Queen I don't like at all. They were a band that loved that overdubbing too, which I wasn't a big fan of that back in the day. Yeah, it's kind of cartoonish, but you got to remember that these movies, the Star Wars movies in particular, were made for young people. They weren't made for adults. So if you enjoy them as an adult, great, but they're not made for adults. They're made to be like superhero movies for kids, right? Hendrix, yes, love Hendrix. I have the three. I like Hendrix live stuff much better though. Like he's got a couple of live albums, it's absolutely outstanding albums. I didn't include them on my series for the month only because I've never owned any of them, but he has some outstanding stuff. There's no doubt about it. I'm not a music documentary guy. I know that's kind of weird, right? I like some documentaries, but generally speaking, it's on animals or science. I don't I don't tend to. The problem with music documentaries is kind of like all these music videos or movies that they put out. They're just pomp. Like I just don't care for them, right? Yeah, I don't have loads of Hendrix. I do have the ones with the Hendrix experience. I think I have something else, but I don't remember what it is. I did have a Hendrix live album, but it was on cassette, which was really poor quality for the cassette. But there was a one track on there that just sticks out, which is I Don't Live Today. The distortion and the guitar sound on that were fantastic. I like animals too. Yep. I tend to be I'm an arborist by trade, or at least I was when I was younger. So I'm big into horticulture and trees and stuff. So that's the kind of stuff I like to watch on, but I prefer to read on it rather than watch on it. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's to me they were both made for kids, and if you're an adult and you enjoy them, that's great. I don't see the point in arguing about this stuff. Why people argue about it? Like if you want to watch it, go ahead. I'm not stopping you, but don't force me to do it because I'm not going to do it. Okay, take your time, count them. I sorry to say this, but I like Neil Sedaka. He was one of my first. I always thought of him as a '50s artist, and I know he isn't, but I always thought of him that way. My parents had a couple of his albums for some reason. I don't know why. Neither of them really liked him. Somebody must have gave them to him or something. And I liked some of his stuff. When I was like 8 or 9, I would be singing that stuff on the way to school. Him and Paul Anka, they were two artists that I would sing their songs on the way to school all the time because my parents had this country rock collection. It was like a 6 album vinyl vinyl album collection that came in a box, and there was lots of stuff on there that was a mix of everything. You had some really Merle Haggard and Jerry Reed and Paul Anka, and it was a mixed bag of shit. Really, is what it was. But there's some good stuff on it, and some of that stuff sticks with me even today. Yeah, I like Paul Anka. He had a different up tempo kind of voice, very commercial sounding voice, but some of the stuff he did was great. I thought. I don't. I rarely listen to any of this stuff anymore, but I remember a lot of it as a child listening to it. My parents would play it in the car, especially if my mother was driving. She liked the more rocky stuff, the 50s rock stuff. She was a big Elvis fan, where my dad was more of a Hank Williams and those type of people, Hank Snow, whatever. Yeah, it was very simplistic music, catchy, easy to listen to, easy to sing along with. Those were all big pluses for it. There's no complex. I couldn't tell you anything about the music in it, just the vocals and the lyrics and the song. I don't even know. I can't remember nothing about any of the music. Yeah, that all stopped in the '90s. And to be honest, I don't even care if it ever comes back. I'm completely happy with my collection. If I can't find something back here to listen to, there's something wrong with me that can't be fixed straight. I've got plenty. And I've got plenty more, and there'll be plenty more coming after that. It just never ends with me. I never can stop buying stuff. I spend more of my money on CDs than probably any other single thing. I just like my CDs. That's all. That's just the way it is. Easier to handle, not too big. They don't take up so much space. They're easier to clean. They don't warp. Um, I don't like stuff on the computer. I don't want to have the computer open to listen to music all the time. I just can't be bothered with it. No, I did. I did new albums I purchased. I did that yesterday afternoon for the month of February. I bought 6. So if you want to watch that episode, you can go watch that as well. I put it out probably for afternoon. I think it was like mid late afternoon yesterday, 4 o'clock. Bought 6. Some good stuff, I think. Stuff I wanted to get. Kind of a mix of hard rock, southern rock, and some prog rock and pop rock. I did get the new Big Big Train album. Kind of was, I think I paid more for that than I did for the other 6 or 5 or whatever it was. So I do that episode every month. I don't do it live, but I do it video on it. I may do a maybe sometime in the summer. I may do a live episode where I go over the stuff I bought for the current year we're in. I haven't bought much for this year. I've listened to a lot, but I haven't bought much. I think the Big Big Train is the only one that I've bought so far. As I don't order online. You've got 30 Hendrix stuff, eh? So I bet you a vast majority of that's live stuff. I bet you about half of your stuff's probably live. Do you have the Hendrix and the Gypsy Band stuff? I think they did one album, right? Am I wrong? They did one album, but there might be some post home. humorously stuff that they put out after he died. I can never say that word. Yeah, he's one of the most prolific live guys, man. They just like some of the stuff he does. You really get an appreciation for him and his abilities from the live stuff. They toned down and they and it might have been the technology too that when they when he did his studio albums, a lot of the stuff seems to be toned down. I don't know if it's toned down on purpose or maybe it's just the limitations of the recording period of time when they're in the studio. Might be the limitations of the studio stuff. That's what I'm thinking. But yeah, I went through a period of time in the '80s, or yeah, in the '80s. So I had my early Kiss era, which was taken over in the late '70s and probably up to about '83 by all kinds of stuff. I was just listening to everything that was rock and loving everything. Then I got a kind of a disenchantment when everybody kind of went commercial in the early '80s, and I just one band after another I stopped listening to. So I wanted to listen to something, and I didn't want to go back to that '50s stuff. So I started looking around, and Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix. I started going in that direction, and some of the rockabilly stuff too. And so those were the Hendrix was kind of the big guy for me at that time period, from probably about 84, maybe through to about 87, about 4 years there, where he was kind of the main player for me. Yeah, these people that say, "Oh, he's overrated." No, he's not. He's not overrated. They say, "Oh, a lot of people can play that stuff." Now, yeah, a lot of people have wah-wah pedals and all kinds of gadgetry on their guitar to make them be able to do the distortion and stuff that he did without having any of that shit going on. He just was good at doing it. Yeah, he wasn't that great at tuning his guitar, but that's why they kept Eric Clapton on the backboard, right? So he could tune his guitar for him. Yeah, and I hear this all the time. Well, he's not as good as people say he was. Nah, he's not as good as people say he was. No, he's better than people say he was. This guy was a phenom. He was doing all of this stuff, and nobody was doing any of this stuff. And even people are doing some of this stuff now, 30, 40, 50 years later, because the technology allows them to do it. But he was doing this when there was no technology with an upside down guitar, for Christ's sake. Yeah, to me, there's no doubt about him being the best of all time. Not just for his soloing stuff, but just his innovation and his ability to use that distortion in a way that was like incredible. You know, the guy that comes closest to me in my mind, the guy that I think from his generation too, from that time period, who I think is the closest sounding to him at times is Terry Kath from Chicago. That guy's amazing too. And there's some other really great guitarists from that time period, but nobody sounds like him. Yes, he was. I'm a left-handed player too, so I kind of get where he's coming from. Having to switch a guitar, I had to do that for a few years, switch my guitar over because left-handed guitars are not cheap. Maybe a little more now than they were then, but they weren't cheap back then. Yeah, a lot of people say this about Trower. He was good. Um, there's a lot of great guitar players out there, but there was not a lot of great guitar players who sounded like Hendrix. In fact, there was nobody that was close. Terry Kath is the only guy that kind of comes to mind for me. Now, I'm not a guitar person, so I'm a more of a drummer and a vocal. I like the vocals, and the drums are the things that really bring me to the forefront because I played and sang both of those things. But um, Hendrix did things that were unbelievable, and he did these things live. He didn't have the advantage of doing them in the studio where everything was filtered, and he didn't have all these foot pedals and wah-wah pop bars and all kinds of stuff that so many people use today. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but he was doing this when nobody was doing this. And you have to think that if he had lived and continued to play, he would have gone in directions that nobody thought of. Maybe that technology is going to be lost forever. Who knows? I'm not taking anything away from Robin Trower or any of these great guitar players. There's lots of them. Steve Hackett is a fantastic guitar player. The guy who played on the UK album, whose name I always forget, and I do not know why. It should be ingrained in me. And he was fantastic. Steve Howe is my favorite guitar player of all time, but he definitely doesn't sound anything like Hendrix. People get on Steve Howe's case because they don't like his tone. They think he's too soft. He's not heavy enough. But that's the style he plays. He comes from a classical guitar sound, more of a acoustic classical guitar feel for his music. I like that about him. That's the thing that drew me in, because I like that style of music. So, it just depends on what you like. You can make arguments from a lot of people. But anybody who tries to tell me that Hendrix wasn't that good, I'm sorry, but you don't know what you're talking about. You need to smoke some more of whatever it is you're smoking. Anyways, I've done pretty much everything I wanted to talk about today, about the three bands. And just give you a little bit look back at what I've been listening to, just in case you missed that. So Zeppelin 2, Zeppelin 4, Black Sabbath's Never Say Die, The Presence from Zeppelin, this album, Born Again. If you like hard stuff and you love Ian Gillan's voice, this is your album. You have to remember that the quality of the album or the production of the album isn't that great, but still worth listening to. Paranoid, Black Sabbath, In Rock from Deep Purple, Who Do We Think We Are from Deep Purple, and Fireball as well. So those are the albums that I've been kind of listening to them. I play them on periodic. But now my focus is going to be over the next few weeks on The Who, as I'm going to be doing my Who ranking at the end of the month. Funny, I've had this band for I've been listening to this band since probably the early 80s, and really took off with me once I got married back in the 90s. I had been listening to them all that time before, but I really got I got two albums near the end of the 90s that I never owned before. One was Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy, which is just a collection of songs, a fantastic album though, and Live at Leeds, which is one of my favorite albums. And that really launched this band for me. This band may not have the greatest albums released. Actually, out of all of the bands in my my favorites list, of my top 10 favorites, or the big 10 now, that's what I call them, because I've added Judas Priest now to that as well. Actually, I think it might be like the big 11 now. But anyways, of all those bands, The Who probably has the least masterpiece albums of all those bands for me. However, they, to me, are the best live band of all of them, I think. Although I love Rush too. So Rush is my favorite band. Have been my favorite band now for more than 25 years. They did have a stint as my favorite band early on in the late 70s and early 80s. They took over from Kiss, but were replaced by Yes. And then Yes had its period of time where they were my favorite, but they didn't produce anything from the period I made them my favorite band until now. So they've backed off. They're now in third spot, right? So I don't see anybody pushing Rush out of the top, even if the album, if they do an album in the next few years and it does a nosedive into the cement, it won't make any difference, I don't think. Yes, The Who had some great compilations, because The Who they came in that period of time, singles. They were a singles driven band like the Beatles, maybe the Stones. and the Kinks. These bands all were singles-driven bands. They all started making albums too, but they were basically a singles-driven band. That's why the compilations are so good. The Who have a tremendous amount of singles, and they just have some absolute killer tracks. To me, they're one of the great, and their stuff is better live than not live. So I'm not sure what we're going to do next week. I'm thinking about a couple topics, so I will probably do some thinking after I finish the video and then upload that. I like to upload it the same day as I finish this one, so people have time to see if it's something they want to watch or not. Anyways, I thank you all here for coming today. It's I love it when people come and ask questions or make me think about stuff. Everybody who says anything says things that are of interest to me. Grandizer, Steven, the Rush guy who's left, I think, and Will. Yeah, Will, the Rush guy. That's who I'm thinking of. Yeah, so all the people that participated in the channel, I thank you for showing up and making comments. It makes this much more interesting. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and please hit the like and subscribe, and we will see you all next Sunday for another episode of Sunday Morning. Do a top 5 guitarist. Yeah, we could do that. We'll stick with the rock guitarists, though we won't go to the prog guitarists because that would be more for the night show. So, but I will try to stick to the prog. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe that's a good topic to do next week. Anyways, we'll see you all next week. So have yourself a good day and a good evening. Take care and go eat your breakfast. Why am I not getting this? Oh, there we are. I do not know what just happened there. Doesn't want to let me escape, guys. I guess I might have to stay here all day. And it's not going to let me out. Oh, here it is. Hey, they moved the button. That happened. Does that happen to everybody where you have a button in a certain place all the time, and then for some reason the computer decides to put it somewhere else? Anyways, have a good one. Goodbye.